Well, good morning, church.
Good morning.
Thank you. I like that. And I was told to say, go Colts. Oh, somebody just said, man, he quenched the spirit right there. Forget it. Do we need to pray again? I just want to settle this up front. I am a Colts fan, of course, close to Indianapolis there, where I just moved from. But I want you to know I have the utmost respect for the Bengals. And going to the Super Bowl last year, one of my closest friends is a Bengals fan, and I've had to shed a lot of tears with him and go through a lot of Kleenexes over the years and a lot of things that he just threw while we were watching the game. He'd throw things at the wall and stuff like that. So I'm happy for you Bengal fans, but just know, go Colts. Don't hold that against me though, okay? Hey, it really is good to be here today. It's a privilege, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you as well. Before I get started, I want to introduce my wife in case you haven't met her. This is Amy, and she is going to be singing later on at the end of the service, and just wanted to introduce her and just let you know about that happening, and looking forward to you hearing her as well. Well, an update on life for us. We've been doing that dreaded thing called moving. So we closed on our house Thursday. The containers that we're putting all of our belongings in arrived on Wednesday, and we started packing those containers on Friday. That was a good 10-hour day. Saturday, a good 10-hour day. And today, we're going to head back to New Pal to try and finish up the third container from our 4,000 square foot house. You know, nobody told me when I bought that big a house or we built it that you're just going to fill it. Well, I wish they would have told me that, because 20 years later, we're feeling the pain of filling that house as well. We're really big into Christmas, so we have like 12, 14 Christmas trees, and people say, you should get rid of those. Well, it's like saying get rid of your pets, okay? For us as well. So that's always a difficult type thing. But we're in the process of that. And I'm just happy today to be able to have a shirt and pants and shoes. I may or may not have socks on, or maybe other things too. I don't know, I just couldn't find everything I needed today, but we're not going to go there as well. But I do want to say that I firmly believe, from a theological standpoint, moving is a result of original sin. Anybody agree to that? And when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Adam and Eve, why was this a part of the fall? All right? This is your fault that we're going through all this as well. But anyway, we're enjoying ourselves and getting familiar with the area. And it's just good to be here. So thanks for inviting us, and thanks for allowing us. And we're looking forward to being your pastor as well, and just being able to help on this spiritual journey. My story started on March 11th, 1959. Here's my picture. I want you to notice the cute little curl. I worked really hard on that. And I know some of you are looking at this picture going, man, was he a chubby baby. That happens, I was a 9-pounder when I was born. But I want you to know, I wasn't the biggest one. My brother was 11 pounds. Now, back in the day when he was born, the hospital was giving gifts away for whoever had the biggest baby. My mom was so excited. She paid for it later, though. But I say, well, who does that? It's just kind of an odd kind of competition, But anyway, that's us right there, or that's me, as a little baby. Did you see the little bell on the? I guess that was a thing back in the day. They put little bells on your shoes or something like that. But anyway, I grew up in a small town in Illinois called Ridge Farm. It's south of Danville, right on Route 1. It's just a few miles west of the Indiana line. I always wanted to live in Indiana, and God's allowed me to do that for the last 29 years and get to continue to do that. Indiana's just a cool state. And people talk about the weather and all that stuff, and I'm thinking, yeah, I love the Four Seasons. This is a great place. I love the state parks. I just love all the recreational things. I love the sports, et cetera, et cetera. So Indiana is a great place to live. I have a sister that's 6 years older than I am, and a brother that's 3 years older than I am. So my mom took it even to her grave, would always introduce me. Here's my son, Paul. He's the baby of the family. It's like, Mom, I'm 45 years old. When are you going to stop saying that, And so that was always a challenge for me as well. But one of the fun things about my story is my grandpa and my dad were partners in farming. And so my grandpa and grandma lived on the farm, and we just lived a quarter of a mile down the road. So we were at the farm all the time, had lots of work to do, but we just got to hang around them. And that was really, really enjoyable. And they were great people as well. Had loving parents. They lived, they were married over 65 years. My mom passed away in 2017, my dad in 91. Not 91, 2000. Yeah, in 21, there we go, in 21. He was 91 years old. That's where that came in. But they had a great life, and they were great parents to us and taught us a lot, and ever indebted to them for what they did teach us. And the thing that we enjoyed the most, my brother and sister, is during those snowstorms that we would walk down to Grandpa and Grandpa's house. Now, anybody from the 60s and 70s remember that we had a lot of snowstorms. Anybody remember the blizzard of 78? Oh yeah, that brings all kind of reactions. The blizzard of 78 is when everything was shut down for days. All the roads, everything. We had a couple snowmobiles, and we would be able to just zip through the country and just down the roads and everything because, the roads were 3-4 feet tall of snow. Nobody was out. You were flying over fences where you knew things should be. Well, they were underneath you. It was just an awesome time. But we would go down to my grandpa and grandma's house during those snowstorms, and we'd go down there and we would play checkers with them, all kind of games. One of the things they love to play is the card game, Rook. Who's familiar with Rook? Oh, okay, a few people out there. Rook has to deal with this black bird. Now, Rook, being the card game it is, was one of those card games was tagged as the Christian card game. Right? Along with some other card games like Dutch Blitz, Uno, there was another one. Skip Bo. Those are all Christian card games. And so on my dad's side of the family, we played the Christian card games. But on my mom's side of the family, not so much. We played those evil cards with kings and queens and jacks and those faces, You catching my drift there? And not only did we play with those cards, but as a young boy, I remember leaving our family gatherings. My vocabulary was expanded a lot from things that were said during those card games. In fact, just a quick note here. After several years of meeting at my grandma's house, and knowing that my mom was a part of 12 siblings, and so 150 in the house, not a problem at all. But there was this hot, heavy card game going on, and then somebody realized that as they were holding their hand up, right behind them was a mirror. Well, that became the dreaded seat, but somebody else was sitting across there, and then they could see what was going on. That was an ugly day, let me just tell you, when that all went down. But we would go up there and play cards and all those kind of things. But basically what I'm saying here at the beginning is you start to see the division that I lived with in my life. My dad's side represented the Christian side, just by the activities. My mom's side, again, not so much. And so as I started to see that unfold in my life, I started to see that there was some tension in our family system and what that looked like. So let me ask you this question today. Have you ever wondered what matters to God? Have you ever wondered what matters to God? Now, I'm going to ask you that question because I want you to respond. But what I'm asking you is, out of everything that you read in the Bible, in God's Word, what do you think matters to God? Just shout it out. Okay, obedience, love. What else? Salvation. Somebody else? Love. Prayer. All right, a lot of great answers of the things that we think that matter to God. And this morning, I want to help unpack all those things that we think that matter to God and just kind of where that all fits in as well as I kind of unfold my story before you. So I grew up in the church. My family was one of those families that we were in church, at church, every time the door was open. Anybody else have that same kind of family? All right. We're just there no matter what. Something's going on. Boom, you're there. So we were at the church. We did the church thing. We supported the church, those kind of things. I led worship a lot of times. I directed the church choir. I was active in youth group. I was also part of a team that would go and do spiritual retreats at other churches. And so there were just a lot of events going on and things that was happening as well. I was doing the faith thing. I was experiencing God at certain times in my life. My parents were very involved in the church, and it was very important to them. And I appreciate that belief in them that we need to be in church. You see, I went to the Evangelical Friends Church. Now, that is a Quaker church, if you don't know what that is. But no, it's not the guy on the oatmeal box. It is a denomination, okay? And just like Methodist or Baptist or Nazarene or something like that. And so it was just another church. I mean, it was a great church, and I really enjoyed that. And it's a great foundation for me as well. And so I understood about faith. But what I didn't understand is, how do you have God in your life every day? How do you make God a part of your life other than just going to church every time the door is open? You mean there's more to life than that? More than just the event? And I didn't understand the time in between and what God was supposed to be doing in our lives and how he was supposed to be leading us. Has anyone else ever experienced that in their life? Did you grow up in any kind of system like that where as long as we were going to church, we were good? Okay, some of you are with me on that. Well, that's what I experienced. And I just had a hard time understanding that there was something beyond that because we never really were taught that. All right, so here's something that's really going to date me. So used to, and I know some denominations still do this, they have this thing called Sunday school. Anybody remember Sunday school? Went to Sunday school? Sunday school was usually the education hour, or the Christian education hour before church. Some churches had it afterwards, but it was a concentrated time. Most of the time, certain age groups would get together, like high school students, young adults, middle-aged adults, the older adults, and they would have an hour of concentrated Bible study. And so that was Sunday school. Well, our church did that as well. But the other thing our church did was to applaud people for their attendance. They would give these little attendance bars out. And I'm telling you what, I was there for 7 straight years, and I was rocking the attendance chain here. That was back before bling was even, popular. But I had it on my suit that I wore every week to church. And here was my attendance pin. It was dangling down, and I was proud of that. And so was everybody else. That was the conversation piece. Now, I know what they were doing. It was a reward and all that kind of stuff, and I can appreciate that. But guess what? There was more attention given to this attendance pin than my heart, that it was over. Ironic symbolism, isn't it? And so I was just really confused about this whole church thing and this whole faith thing. It was just something that we did. But at what point did it make an impact on my life? And that's what I struggled with as well. And that's where I was just kind of wondering what was going on and what this whole thing was faith about. So it wasn't until I went to Bible college that I understood what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and how to follow God and honor him every day of my life. And that happened a few years later. So during a weekend service that I attended, the evangelist was preaching on Psalm 139, 23, and 24. And let's take a look at that. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. That became my life verse when I heard that, because that's exactly what I needed God to do in my life. I understood that verse, and it became very important to me. Now, let me tell you a little bit what's going on here in Scripture and why this is being written. This is written by a guy named David, and this is in Old Testament times. And David was a guy that grew up loving God. He was a shepherd, and that's what he did as a young boy. So he got to establish that relationship with God, tending to the sheep. And what do you do when you're out there? You spend a lot of time praying and singing to God. And that was David, and he had a really pure heart. But the problem is, when David grew up, he started having this anger towards people who were angry at God. And it was his enemies that were angry at God and didn't love God, didn't believe in God. And David started having this anger inside of him. And so he went to David, and David went to God and said, God, I have this anger, man, against these people because they hate you. I mean, he was so mad that he went to God and he said, David said to God, God, would you just hide your head? Would you just go somewhere so I can unleash my anger on these people? Because I am so mad that they hate you. And God said, no, that's not your job. And David once again said, I don't care, God. I want to hurt somebody just the way I feel. I want to hurt them because they don't like you. They hate you. God, would you just turn your back and let me punish these God-hating thugs just for a moment so I can feel better? However, he also was saying, God, I know I shouldn't feel this way. Will you search my heart? And this was his prayer. Will you search my heart, God? I know I shouldn't feel this anger inside, but I do. Will you help me with this struggle? One of my favorite games as a child was playing flashlight tag. Anybody else relate to that? Flashlight tag, yeah, good game. It's much like hide and seek if you don't know what it is. And so you're in the darkness and you go out and hide, and the person is it. What do? They have to go around, and when they hear something and they think there's somebody there, they shine their flashlight on them. And they try to find them and call them out and say, you're caught. But see, in the midst of darkness, when the light comes, you're revealed. And who you are is revealed. And that's what God is doing here with David. He's searching his heart, and he's saying, let me take care of those things in your life, David. But see, you know what happened there? David is saying to God, I willingly give you this flashlight to search my heart. And that's what God desires from us as well, to willingly give this to him and say, man, I know there's some things in my life. I have issues. I have things, God, that need to be dealt with. Will you do this? Take this flashlight and search me, God. I need help. So the fact here there is this. In the darkness, God is the light. And he needs to come and show us what he needs to do in our life as well. But you see the difference is we need to let God do the work, not ourselves. Let God do the work and let him search our heart and let him take us to where he wants to take us. Have you ever felt this way? Because David really wrestled with this anger. He really wrestled with that. And in his heart, he felt anger toward these other people. And this is where we need to let God do the work. Have you ever felt that way to somebody else? Have you ever been so angry that you just want to take care of the situation? You want to deal with it because you think you can deal with it better than what God can? How difficult is it to surrender that to God? Sometimes it's really difficult to surrender that. Because we think, man, God, if you just turn your head, I'll take care of this and we're good. Let me just do this. And God's saying, that's my job. Let me take care of that as well. Well, this was exactly my struggle in high school. I struggled with, how do I let God do the work in my life that needs to be done? My high school days were pretty normal. I was a football player and played for the Rich Farm Bulldogs. Look at I'm really rocking the part down the middle there. You see, everybody in the 70s parted their hair. I think it was a precursor to the mullet in the 80s, right? I'm not even going to ask you if you had a mullet, okay? John, did you have a mullet? You had hair then, all right. That's what counts. So I was the center on the team, and I was nose guard on the team as well. And so played for 4 years. But I remember early on in the freshman years when you're doing two-a-days, and you're in the heat of the day, and you're just cranking out the sweat and everything, and you're tired. I remember going home that evening and talking to my mom, and I said, Mom, will you please let me quit football? This is painful. It's painful, Mom. And she goes, now, Paul, you know that whatever you start, you have to finish. Did you hate that line too that your parents would use? I hated that line. So I played 4 years. However, the challenging part came our junior and senior year when we went 0-16. And that was really painful as well. I kind of wished I would have quit and not listened to my mom. But my struggle during those days was just, who am I and how do I live this life because I really didn't understand what it meant to have a relationship with God. So here was my tension. Now keep in mind, I grew up with the mentality that God was always there, but I didn't understand that relational part. So growing up in a home where more importance was placed on how you looked on the outside than what your heart looked like. And this led me down a path just questioning this whole thing called faith. And really, does it make a difference in your life? And you may be here today, and maybe this is your first time here, or you haven't been back to church for a while. I just want to say to you, it's okay to question this thing called faith, because it's a part of discovery, and that's okay. God will meet you somewhere along the journey, but it's okay if we have those questions as well. You see, as long as my hair was combed, and as long as my clothes looked good, and as long as my behavior was good, I was good. My dad thought, man, this is great. You see, my dad was really big into the family name. He wanted the family name to be protected. He wanted it to have, the right sound to it and the right look to it. And he wanted everybody to say, oh, the Romoser name, that's a good name. Those are good people. And so that's what I lived with until that one day on the farm when my brother was caught smoking a cigarette. Oh, it was disastrous. So my dad made him extinguish it, and then he made my brother Gary eat the cigarette. Wow. You know what I learned as the 12-year-old boy looking at that? Never get caught smoking. That's what I learned. But that was pretty traumatic for me at that age, going, whoa, I can't believe my dad just did that. But he was trying to prove this point. You see, the problem is my dad's philosophy was bad people smoked and bad people drank. And so where that became tension for me is when I became a teenager and my friends started to do that. And all of a sudden, they weren't bad people. They were good people. They were my friends. But how do I live with this two ideas of different philosophies? Kind of that divided life, that divided understanding. But not only just with that, but just even this whole faith issue too. When people start doing things you think you're told's wrong, this just added to the frustration of my system and trying to figure out life as well. And then I came across this verse. 1 Samuel 16:7 tells us, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Would you read this with me? The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. This verse changed my life. It really brought some things together. Can you guys identify with this? The whole external, internal thing, the confusion, the frustration, the wondering what's going on as well. This could be in the area of money or pride, or it could be that you think you're better than somebody else. It could be even being jealous. But all these things that you deal with, but God looks at the heart, not the external part. But all those things were in my heart, the jealousy, the just thinking I was better than other people. And that was the part of that darkness in there. My confusion started to make sense after this verse. You see, I didn't have the foundation to know what to do. In the midst of this confusion, I just wanted to be loved and I just wanted to be cared for. At this point, I'm a teenager. Would somebody just love me? You know I'm going to have faults. You know I'm going to do stupid things, and I did. That's a whole nother sermon. But I just wanted somebody to love me and say, Paul, you're okay. You're going through a lot of changes, a lot of things happening in your life, but you're okay. And teenagers, to you today, I want to send that message. You're okay. It can be a challenging time in life, but you're okay, and you're loved. And you're cared for. And you have a church family here that wants to come alongside you. You see, young people don't want to be talked at. They don't want to be put down. They don't want to be told that they're wrong. They're in that life cycle of stage that says, I need some identity. I need some affirmation. I need to know that I'm loved and cared for. And that's what our young people need. And that's what I needed. And I think one reason that I have spent so many years in youth ministry is because I know the need that young people long for in that area. And I want to give that to them. And I feel like I have. And so then we have this challenge of feeling loved, feeling needed, and all those kind of things. And so one of the things that happened back in the day, does anybody remember the days of revival meetings, camp meetings, those kind of things? Yes, several heads shaking yes. So I'm 16 years old, and our church is having this revival meeting. And we had ours this particular time at the city park. And so if you don't know what a revival is, it was basically just maybe 1 week. Some groups had 2 weeks where you would have a church service every night of the week. And usually a traveling evangelist would come in and they would preach. And it was just kind of a concentrated time to hear God's word and to focus on your relationship with God. So I'm 16 years old. It was a Tuesday night. And I remember hearing this guy named Gary Wright, who was the evangelist. And Gary was preaching away, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit was stirring in my heart saying, you need to go to the altar. See, a lot of times at the end of these meetings, they would have an altar call. An altar call is where people would walk forward, usually at the front of the stage, and they would pray, and people would come and pray with them. But it was a chance just to acknowledge that I need some prayer, I need some help, I need God to do some business in my life. And so, boom, I was down there, and I was pouring my heart out, and I was praying. And I remember Gary saying to me, or he asked me, what can I pray for you about? And I said, I'm just struggling with some things in my life. And he said, well, you need to give those over to God. And I said, I can't. He said, yes, you need to give them over to God. I said, I can't. I need to take care of this sin first in my life, because when I go before God, I need to look good. Remember? External. I need to look good before God, and then he'll accept me. External. Remember? And so at that point, Gary was saying, no, that's God's job. That is God's, and that's what God was saying to David. It's like, it's my job to search your heart. It's my job to know what's going on with you. And I can take care of that. It's not your job to get even with people. And the evangelist is saying, it's God's job to take care of your heart. Just give it over to him and he'll take care of it. And I said, no, I can't come to God in this condition. And I walked away and struggled for a few years and just away from God and just kind of up and down again. And just that confusion continued in my life as well. And I just want you to know today that your pastors, they want to know that you're real. And they want to know that you can come to us anytime with whatever's going on. We all have stuff going on in our lives. But guess what? We have stuff going on in our lives too, don't we, John? And so we want to live out our faith in front of you. And there's going to be some times that could be ugly as well. But faith needs to be real. We need to be authentic before God and not put on the show and not pretend like everything is going well. We need to let God see us for who we are. You see, it's what is in the heart that matters. And that's what God looks at, and that's what he desires. So my senior year of high school, I started searching for a college to attend. And I was looking at schools where I could have that big college experience, you know, the football games, the basketball games, the concerts, the late night runs for food with your buddies. But guess what God did? In the midst of his sense of humor, he sends me to Southwest Kansas to a Bible college that's in a town populated 750 total people, counting cats and dogs. There were like 3 paved streets, and there was like 150 people in this college. And I remember driving out there going, God, you made a mistake, man. I'm in the desert. And I remember my grandma telling me about the tumbleweeds that I'm going to see. I'm going, tumbleweeds? What's that? But I was in the desert, and I was so disappointed in that sense. But I'm telling you what, it didn't take me long to realize this is exactly where I needed to go. So this picture that you see up here, this is college life. This is a fall party, and my date and I, we were tourists. And so we were going around doing the tourist thing and being obnoxious and whatever. But that's a little representation of college life. But you see, the problem here is I'm in this environment where I'm being asked things about my life I'd never been asked before. There was one girl the first week of school, she was an upperclassman, and she said, so how's your relationship with God going? Well, do you want the answer that I should give you, or do you want the real answer? I mean, that was kind of the way it is, you know. what do you mean my relationship? I'm here, aren't I? You know, that type of thing. And then she said, what do you feel like God's will is for your life? I'm not sure. See, these are questions I hadn't been asked. These are questions that wasn't really a part of my system or structure. Even though I'd gone to church all my life, it was just like, you're asking me about my daily walk with God? What's that? I go to church. I mean, that kind of thing. That's what was coming out with that. So it's really a different kind of mentality and different thought process as well. So anyway, so I'm in the desert experience out there, but again, it was just a great place to be as well. And then the second thing that comes up from this verse is we're talking about test me and know my anxious thoughts. Test me and know my thoughts. And David was saying, it's not just my heart, God, that I want you to look at. I want you to look at my thoughts too. So this passage moves from the heart to the mind. Now, why would that be? Well, it's because David knew that the heart is evil, but he also knew that the mind was deceptive. And you see, when we are tempted with sin, guess what happens in those first few seconds? It goes to our mind first. And then our mind is deciding, do I want to go this direction? Do I want to give in to this sin? And when that happens, it goes about 12 inches to the heart. And then our heart gets dark because the mind has said okay to that. And that was a struggle that David was having with this hatred he was experiencing. And that was a struggle I was having too, is because my heart was filled with all these things because my mind was deceptive. When our mind lingers too long, we just go down the wrong path. And so I struggled with that for a while. But I thought, here I am at a Bible college. I need to get my act together as well. And it was interesting, too, when I told friends and family I was going to Bible college, the first thing they said was, are you going to be a pastor? And I said, no way. I'm not going to be a pastor. You see, in my mind, pastors were lazy, weird, and bald like John. And I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be like that. And the weird part for that was a lot of these pastors were just not cool people. And they're not people, I mean, they were nice people, but they weren't really people I'd hang around with. And these are pastors like we had at our church. And so, you know, God had to deal with me on that attitude. He had a lot of work to do. And I believe in David's prayer, he did not want himself to stand in the way. And I didn't want myself to stand in the way either. You see, David was asking God, is there anything that you need to deal with? And you see, when I was struggling with the same thing in my call to ministry, it was the same thing. I was asking, God, what do you need to deal with my life? I mean, I knew. See, this whole thing about the pastorate, I just thought, am I fit to do this? Am I fit to be able to carry out this calling that God desires for me? I just thought, man, I know what's in my heart. I can't say yes to this. And that's when God said, let me take care of what's in your heart. Hand me your flashlight, and I'm going to search your heart. And that's what I did. It was that fall. It was that fall when there was a altar call at the church. It was during the worship service. And this is the part about the offensive way in me. And so God started searching my heart about the offensive way in me, the part of the prayer. And so where it's a Sunday morning worship service, and God started dealing with me about this offensiveness and the things in me that offended him. And it was like, Paul, I'm preparing your heart, but there's some things you need to deal with. So during this worship service, I started feeling the Holy Spirit inside me. And so I went down to the altar. And I was praying, and it was like, God, I know you're nudging my heart in the ministry, but I have to get rid of these things. And it was at the altar that I started to do that as well. And right there, the pastor came over, and when I looked up, guess who it was? Gary Wright, the same evangelist 4 years earlier that said the same thing to me, give it over to God. Does God have a sense of humor? When God brings people into your life and you don't get it, he's not finished. He'll bring them back. So watch out. So why prolong the misery? Just do it and be obedient in the moment. But I couldn't believe that Gary had become the campus church pastor at this college out in no man's land, Kansas, all the way from Rich Farm, Illinois, who was an evangelist. Now he's gone pastor at the church where I'm going to, this Podunk Bible College, in this place I didn't want to go. I think there was a divine appointment there. And it was an amazing time. And at that point I said yes to God, prayed for a clean heart, said yes to ministry, and now here I am a lot of years later, 41 to be exact, who has had a sweet ministry. And God has been just amazing in my life and being able to lead people as well. And so I'm excited about that. But you see, it's what's in the heart that matters. And that's what God looks at as well. So you're wondering, what are you doing here, Paul? I forgot to show you the picture of the ministry. So here's a picture in youth ministry. Chocolate syrup. So we'd have this 100-foot sundae in a rain gutter, and then people would bring chocolate syrup bottles, and it ended up in this huge fight, so we just get covered with chocolate syrup. But you do these stupid, crazy things in youth ministry so you can relate, have memories, create fun, and those kind of things, and talk about those times where you got pounded with syrup and those kind of things. But anyway, that represents my ministry right there, basically. But anyway, I'm sure you're wondering, well, Paul, what are you going to do here? What are you going to do for us? Well, some of the things that John and Seth and I have talked about is I have a long background in small group ministry. And so I hope to be able to do that and help you guys get together with groups, and the groups that are already there, just better train people and get more people into groups and new people and those kind of things. God has really used that giftedness in me. I did that a lot in youth ministry, but the last 4 years in my ministry, it was mostly with adult ministry. And we started with 6 groups and went to 41 groups in 4 years through COVID, through God's faithfulness of just leading people to step up and be a leader and those kind of things. And so I'm hoping to do that within this congregation. Another thing is our youth ministry. I want to help create a youth ministry. Young people feel loved, and they can develop their relationship with God and develop leadership as well. So that's what I hope to do. And also, Amy and I, we just want to live life with you. We feel called here. This isn't just a short stop. We just left a ministry of 29 years. You don't just on a whim just go, I think I'll move to Greensburg, or I'll go help with Batesville or whatever. We want to be here, and we want to be here for a while. So God has called us here, and we look forward to getting to know you and love you as well. The fourth part of this prayer, as I wrap up, the fourth part is, lead me in your way. Lead me in the way everlasting. And so the last part here is one of the desires in leading me forward was I had a desire that I wanted to be married and I wanted to have a family. And God granted that desire. And in 1990, July 21st, I got to marry the lady of my life, Amy, right? Good. Amy. She's an amazing lady. The reason I'm here today is because of her. She is a prayer warrior. And she loves God, and I can't wait for you to get to know her. She's a great teacher of the Word, too, and just amazing, and I'm blessed. And she's an amazing mom as well. So we have 3 children. Katie is 30 and is a school teacher and lives in McCordsville and is married to Lee. And then our son, Alex, is over here. Alex is with us from Orlando, and he has a job down there, and we feel sorry for him living in Orlando. And then Danielle's our youngest, and she's 22, and she lives in Southeast Missouri. Just got engaged over Labor Day weekend, so we have a wedding to plan. So we're excited about that. But that's our family in a nutshell as well. But let me just tell you, God does grant you the desire of your heart. But it's really important to understand it's the heart that matters. As we wrap up this morning, I just want to say to you, God loves you and cares about you, and he desires you to come before him to have him clean your heart. And at the beginning of this message, I asked what matters to God. And you see, when we think about God's love, we think about salvation, we think about obedience, all that comes from the heart, and that's what matters. I asked you about searching your heart, and that's what God desires to do for each one of you. But he desires you to hand the flashlight to him so he can do that searching in your life. So take out that flashlight, hand it over to God, and let him do that work in your heart. We might think we're hiding from God, but he knows your heart. He knows what you're going through and what you're dealing with as well. So where are you today? Where are you in your relationship with God? Are you struggling with some of these sinful habits? Are you struggling with some of these emotions, some of these things that you know that's not honoring to God, not pleasing to him? Are you struggling with this division of external and internal? I got to look good. I want to present myself to people. And then there's a big divide between who you are on the outside and who you are on the inside. Whatever that is, I just pray that you would spend some time before God and allow him to do that work in your life. And get to that point where you would say, I would rather have Jesus than anything in this world. And I hope that's your prayer today.